Recording in progress. It's May 9th, 1 p.m. This is the Commission for Conservation and Environmental meeting. Call to order. Roll call. Richard. Giannaccio is here. Tom Costello here. Julian Shepard.
Yep.
Is here. Ashley Seyfried is on Zoom.
Here.
Scott Loffer is here. Eric Dank is here. And also from IT we have
Bob Gironis.
But you're not going to sing for, you're not singing for the whole meeting.
I'm here for part two.
is helping us out, which we greatly need. Okay.
Wait. You got to list out the ex officio people.
Oh, ex official. I'm sorry. Council President Hadassah Medavetsky.
Present.
Present. And who else is on the list?
So then the mayor sent.
Really have a
the mayor sent us for the names. I believe it's Joshua Paludi for DPW, and Nicholas Ballard for Parks and Rec. Were assigned by the mayor as the ex officio members.
And what is the last name? Nicholas
Ballard. I can. He's the one I emailed about Birthfest. Ballard. The highlighted one.
Do you have the appointment dates for them? I haven't been able to get appointment dates.
Appointment and
I
mean I can
dates
forward you the email I got from the mayor. I guess when he finally responded to my
I
email
asked
will be the
mayor's
date.
office about that. I'm like,
okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
ex-official members from DPW, Josh Paludi, absent. From Parks, Nicholas Ballard, absent. And let's see, who else is absent?
We don't have somebody for planning commission yet. I've been emailing with them, but they have
Planning
nobody's been assigned.
Commission has not identified their ex-officio member. So we're on hold for that. Matt Ryan is absent. Who else is absent? Ashley's on Zoom. Ashley's on Zoom, so that's 2, 6, 7. Who else?
Darius.
Oh, Darius Bank is absent. We were going to print one copy of the minutes, but I don't see it anywhere. I do have a copy that I printed. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes?
Hey, Nate.
Nate Hotchkiss just entered, city council member.
Join us.
Feel free to sit
Yeah.
up here. Join in.
Party. We just took roll call.
Thanks for joining. Excited about the work you guys are going to do for me. Both of you've already directed some things. That's great.
So I don't see any members of the general public here today. So we will close the section for public comment. Seems like there's no one here to speak.
We didn't actually approve minutes.
Oh,
No.
okay. You're right. The minutes of the last meeting is that I know I have a couple comments. Does anybody else have comments?
I got just one. I'm not terribly fussy, but my name is spelled differently from what it is in the minutes, Richard. I'm spelled the way as if I were actually herding sheep, which my ancestors did a long time ago. Shepherd, okay?
Okay, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I just heard students now.
Because, well, your email is a little different, correct?
Yeah, they
The
left
email
out.
doesn't have the D in it.
Yeah, they didn't let me have that.
So HERG?
Yes. Yes, HERD, thank you. It's not a big deal.
Sorry about that. No, I must have copied it from something that was wrong because I didn't check it.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Just on number 2 on the Climate Action Resiliency Committee, and forgive me if maybe I spoke wrong, but just a point of clarification, I don't think it needs to be necessarily changed in the minutes because I may have misspoken. As far as the blueprint, 2011 blueprint for Binghamton, that was more of a reference point, just some history to look at. It wasn't really going to be the focus of that group. It's just part of the information to review. As far as I think the real crux of it is the Climate Action Resiliency from the city's website has hyperlinks to all kinds of different documents and reports and ongoing studies and consultants and whatnot. And I think that that's really what I was trying to push the group to at least initially focus on that because there's a lot there. And I think it's pretty critical to take part in that review and make our comments known and report back to City Council before they approve the update of that report from CNS while the consultants are still available.
Yeah, I think I understood it just the way you explained it now, so it's not clear that maybe we should reword it.
So I just said the basis for this committee is the city's 23-24 climate action plan and GHG inventory, greenhouse gas, to review, analyze data with follow-up contributions to the effort. My thinking is there's enough work for this topic to focus our current energies on before we become splintered with multiple of directions, which I think it will end up leading to committees or subcommittees as we get more information and data to review and look through it and analyze it. I think it'll be somewhat obvious where the shortfalls are or where we want to contribute to that. And then my next comment is on number 3 on the managed native gardens and on task force committees altogether. There was a lot of response from Court Counsel, and my understanding was that the commission does not have the authority or ability to appoint outside members to a task force. Only council. That was my understanding from Court Council's.
So but that's what happened. So
this is what happened. Right. Yeah, no, it's agreed.
Okay.
Nothing needs to be changed in the minutes on that. And I'll send something in right now to the group about it, just to try and clarify the point, if that's okay.
See, that raises another issue because in the bylaws it says that we can appoint community members, right? And also, I mean, it's one thing after another. I thought the minutes were due a week before the meeting, and now they're due a week after the meeting instead of a week before the next meeting. But we were given a draft of the bylaws. I don't know the origin of this.
That was from
okay. So,
and I basically took them from the county's EMC group, their bylaws, and just tried to adapt them so that we were similar.
The Corporation Council and others have had copies of this to look over, and they did not bring these issues to our attention.
Agreed, which I think this is going to take a while longer to get this refined. That's why I didn't put it really on the agenda because it's not really ready, in my opinion.
And the same with the discrepancies with the open meetings law.
Yes.
Those should have been in the original draft, but if they weren't in the original draft, I think Corporation Council should have brought those to our attention earlier rather than later.
Yeah, so we'll work on it. We'll keep refining them until we get them. So everybody's satisfied before we bring them up for a vote.
So would you like to have a motion to approve the minutes?
So a motion to approve the minutes.
As amended.
As amended. Motion from Tom Costello.
Second.
Second from Richard Ginascio. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously approved by the members in attendance. So the minutes are approved.
Can you hear, Ashley?
Yeah, I said I don't know if you heard me.
I wasn't sure if it was an I or like what's going on.
My apologies, I forgot
Gotcha.
you were there. We're still 20 years behind here. We'll catch up though. Okay, now the public comment. Seems how there's no public here. We'll close that section of the meeting. Old business. Recording secretary election or alternative members rotate as acting secretary. So, seems how you were elected in abstention, Eric, we'll give you the opportunity to decline or agree.
I accept.
Eric has accepted to be
Thank you.
secretary. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. Now it is official that Eric Dank is the recording secretary for the commission. No further discussion. I assume on that. Okay, discussion on the city climate action plan and greenhouse gas inventory. I'm hoping that we can come to consensus on focusing on this topic while allowing committees, subcommittees to organically evolve from our efforts made in collecting, reviewing, and analyzing related data and reports. We'll share our findings with related departments, city administration, city council, and city residents. And there are some time constraints, I believe, with the current consultant that the city has under contract, CNS. I believe that the planning department is spearheading that. And there have been several requests for data from the planning director, and we have thus far not received any data that I'm aware of. Anybody?
Did you see? No, we have not received any data. Did you see her most recent email? She gave a date on when she plans to share the data.
And did you see my response to that? I really don't understand what the difficulty is in.
Yeah, the request was for raw data, it was not for a report, so there's no need to wait for a report to produce the data, is that correct?
That's my understanding, that's my request. It was just to get for the members to get a copy of the data as turned over to the consultant, which it's already been turned over as far as I know. They've asked for supplemental agreement and looking for payment. So I would like to believe they've done the work. And I don't think it's an unreasonable request as far as workload goes to turn over that data. I'm not sure what our next step is to get access to that. And because there are going to be many data requests going forward, and to look at the granular data, not a report or a review, we will form the review ourselves and supply a report to the affected parties. And as part of our authority to report to the general public and educate, I think it's critical that we get information so that we have something to report. I know Councilman Kavanaugh requested a report.
We voted on it. It's
And
more
it was
than a
voted on
request.
by
It
council,
is
and
a full council vote on it.
aside from the time limit being, I would say, kind of unreasonable for people that are volunteers, to give them 3 weeks to put a report on for something that's probably a few hundred pages or more of data and various reports, I don't think is a reasonable request time-wise. I think it's a reasonable request to ask for that, sure. But I think we would have requested more time. But all I can report at this time is that we have received no data to review. So I can't personally vouch for the report that was given by CNS because I haven't seen the data. And I know to me, there's graphs which I like to see, but there's like 10 or 12 years missing. It just jumps from 2006 to 2023 or 22, and it shows the line, but it doesn't have points and times in between, which to me, if you're reviewing, if you set a goal and you're looking at accomplishment, or if you're in the right trajectory towards that goal, don't you want to see the points in between and see if it's going up and down, and then look at your operations and say what was happening during this time. So what worked and what didn't work, what's successful, what isn't successful, and how can we get to our goals more efficiently. And I do think a lot of these things cost a lot of money to not be aware of that information. Besides not helping the environment. As far as, I think it's great that after reading the different reports, it's great that the city is purchasing clean energy, but what about the usage? Has the usage gone up? Has it gone down? What have they installed? What processes are they looking at? And what are the policies that are shaping these decisions going forward? So, you know, the direction stated by the goals are, I think they're worth keeping. And also, but also, how do you get there? And maybe the goals could be set further out.
So I just want, for people following along at home, I believe we're talking.
It's not live stream. Just so you know.
Okay, but I believe the document we're talking about is the greenhouse gas inventory that was October 2023, right?
Yes.
By CNS, and that is available if you go to the City of Binghamton website and you search for greenhouse gas inventory.
Well, I would start with climate. If you go to the webpage, climate under City of Binghamton, climate change and resiliency.
Okay,
and
you can find it there.
All these topics are underneath there, but go to that page first, and then you'll see hyperlinks.
Or if you just search greenhouse gas inventory, there'll be a bunch of documents that pop up. So this is a publicly available document that we were talking about.
Sure.
Right. This is,
yeah, I don't think there's any confidential information in any of these.
This is a published on the City of Binghamton website document that we're discussing.
Well, and it's in the past, when I was Commissioner of Public Works, we used to, on the city website, we would put a solid waste report. We just updated the report. It dated back to 1990. And it showed the recycling quantities, it showed the vehicles we used. We had maps of collection. We tried to look at it, and it was still a work in progress. By all means, it was not a finished product. But we were getting more information, and we were making headway as far as improvements go. We were down to 10,000 some tons a year in landfill waste. We had improved on recycling. It wasn't a complete offset of what was going to the landfill. I'm not sure where, how the other waste disappeared per se. I know there was some talk about landlords that own properties in town and out of town bringing things from other properties and putting it in front of properties they owned in Binghamton, which I imagine happens sometimes. That explains part of it. But the sticker system, which I think was pretty unpopular with many, especially older folks, I think we could have done a much better job. educating the public and talking about it. If at the time we had the ability to collect more data and report more on a nuts and bolts level of telling people what it costs them as a homeowner, as a resident, what the difference in cost was to them, because it was several $100,000 we reduced the tipping fee, and there was revenue from the stickers. It wasn't, they weren't meant to make money off of people for putting large things out. It was to get them to reuse things, to give them away, to think again if they could fix something and use it rather than throwing it out to the curb, and just trying to help with recycling and reuse altogether. And it was pretty successful, at least on the economic level. And I know since then, I've gotten literature from both council people that are here that I have read some of, not all of, but it made me think about things that I didn't think of when I was the Commissioner of Public Works, like how it affected. And we did, when we had a sanitation commission, we did go to neighborhood assemblies and we did talk to people. And one of the things was lower income people had a problem with paying for the blue bags. And that was, we tried to figure out a way, and this is 15 years ago, so my memory escapes me and I don't have any records from that. But I know there was discussion about how we could distribute blue bags for people in need, because we certainly didn't want to disadvantage them. But since then, I've thought about possible programs that we could do or start or help start with the university, with the group that's working north of Maine, with different projects that are going on. And I just, off the top of my head, was thinking there's some pocket parks or different things where kids go. And to me, we did start doing some educational forums in the grade schools and things where we pull up with a garbage truck and try to talk to kids, because we can educate the kids, they'll educate their parents in a lot of cases. But also, and then find a way to reward people for showing up for a little seminar or something at these parks or wherever and give them bags. And also find a way to supply people with bags, but also educate them on how to use less bags and reduce their use of the solid waste disposal system at hand right now. So I think there's a lot of room for things to do on that on a low cost level. And I think it would be mutually beneficial, especially if we could get the departments involved, because there's an education that goes both ways there. You know I learned more about garbage than I ever dreamed of knowing about, and I know that there's way more to learn about it. And it is kind of interesting.
I just want to make sure we're staying on agenda.
Yep.
That's part of the open meetings law, which is the next piece. So we're specifically on the agenda item relating to the greenhouse gas inventory and the city climate action plan.
Okay, sorry.
So I don't want to get too far astray.
Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Well, I have
Yes.
So
Tom Costello.
I want to go back to the first thing you said about that climate action plan, which is, do municipal staff perceive us as a commission as having a reason to look at raw data? And do we have a position where we're supported in the idea of accessing that raw data because we have a skill set that we bring to the table collectively that may provide insights that are valuable? We may serve as a review group where we're providing oversight and quality control. When I read the documents, I don't know the answers, but I've raised a lot of questions based on my own experience about how much this data is actual data and how much it's conjecture. Like it's based on assumptions or projections. I don't know the answer, but I saw. So I think some of those things have to be addressed in a dialogue between us and municipal staff at the department head level before we can be meaningful to council.
Sure. Yeah, I think the information you get needs to be supported by the data. So we would need
And-
access to that.
Yeah, so on that
I'm
data
sorry,
topic,
just to finish the thought.
Yeah.
But it's important that staff say they recognize our access to the data, to the raw data, because I get a sense that they don't really think it's necessary for us to see data if we already have a report, or if we're gonna get a report. And I think that's different than the mission that's stated.
so I was gonna say the kind of broader context of data, prior to the Environmental Commission being up and running, I reached out relating to getting access to this data because I was invited to come and speak to Sierra Club, and I wanted to take a look at some of the data and some of the reports that were existing and have some sort of feel for stuff. And so I reached out relating to that under what's it 26-3 inspection of city departments, bureaus, and institutions. Under Article 2 inspections of institutions adopted in 1970. It says any member of city council shall have the authority to inspect any city department, bureau, or institution at any reasonable time. And my understanding from state documents that records include digital records like data, and I was unable to get the data for that project of mine. Corporation Counsel then suggested to me that, that despite this not being anywhere I can see in the city charter, that I have more authority for data access through city council voting as a whole or through committee, which was part of, well, once we got the Environmental Commission going, then there was another reason to have the data, which was for us to get good feedback, yes, particularly relating to how council has to vote on contracts, spending taxpayer money, to evaluate whether or not we are spending that money wisely with firm. But basically there's kind of a history on trying to access this. And that was part of the reason for city council not to just kind of, it's clearly within the purview of this commission to look at this from the charter. It's clearly in your purview as an environmental commission, but to actually formally vote as a city council to assign looking at this to this commission, because of kind of these background conversations with Corporation Counsel, where they don't perceive a plain reading of the city charter, again, dating back to 1970. This is not something that we've changed or done anything, that is interpreted as individual council members having the right to see information. So that's kind of the history on why we voted to assign it to you, and why we believe that there would be less pushback from the city with that kind of a vote. So that just kind of give the whole kind of background on this. I have been trying to get access to this data for quite some time. This data does not contain personal information. This data is all already all bound together because it was sent to a third-party contractor. This is not sensitive information. I'm very frustrated that that we're trying to do all of these things and we're listening even when it's, I mean, to me, my understanding, my plain reading of the charter, I should just be able to get this information. And then from the conversations, it seems like, okay, even if you want to ignore this section of the charter, that if we vote as a body, that's kind of the next level. And I mean,
but that's not required.
It is not, I cannot see where that is required, but that was the advice of the city attorney. So we have now done that, and now we are still not getting access to the data. I understand from Dr. Burling's email that she's willing to provide the data when she provides the report, which was, I think, end of May at this point. But I mean, I really don't like throwing around the word subpoena, but like if we can't get access to data, that seems to be the direction that city council is being put in.
Well, I'd just like to add, I was reading in the city charter where it states any information that's been publicly available in the past by record, like the sanitation report that was posted on the website, that information is supposed to be made available just on a verbal request to the general public, let alone city council or commission membership.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean,
There's
just in
layers.
general, the access to like public information should be available to the public, let alone members of the commission, let alone elected officials that are trying to be informed and make decisions on behalf of the city. So it's kind of obnoxious and ridiculous that we have to, we're pulling teeth to get information to make good decisions on behalf of the residents and things. So that's
Related to items that city council is voting on.
right.
This is completely within the purview of our work that we are being asked to do. And we are being asked to vote on these initiatives by the city government, by the mayor and the comptroller and all of these people are signing off on these requests to us to vote on something and then refusing us the information to assess whether or not it's the right move for the taxpayer. So that's, I'm just sorry not to get too ranty here, but this is
So CNS had a contract renewal up, right?
yeah,
supplemental agreement.
supplemental agreement.
Where does board of contractors and public come in relation to that? If we can't get the data, like there are mechanisms to control that, right? Has there been any official discussion about our data request or your data request in the context of the procurement process?
That I don't know, but I would.
Let me just ask a question in the grand scheme of things. Would the general public want to fund departmental requests with no information on what the requests are for and going to be used for?
That's a hypothetical question.
Yeah. Why would council approve any expenditures if you can't get the information? It's just a question.
Valid point.
I mean, to me, I don't pay bills. I don't know what the bill's for, or what I bought personally.
And obviously, we don't have the bandwidth to look into everything.
Sure.
But in this
Absolutely
case,
not.
I was interested in the capacity of wanting to make a community presentation, and then once we formed this commission, we suddenly had the bandwidth to actually really understand what's going on this particular topic. And because you could say, well, why this and why not 1,000 other things? There is only limited bandwidth for everybody. But this happens to be a topic where there's enough both community interest and community expertise for us to have an advisory board to look at it.
Yeah.
So that's why this, as opposed to 80 other things that you can say, well, why don't we have a full analysis run on this or that?
Any other comments about this?
Does council have the option of asking the consultant directly for the data? As someone that was in the consultant community, I can't imagine them saying no, because it's just bad business. Or just ask them the question, is the data available to be accessible?
Yeah.
What
I can
could
try that.
possibly be the homework? Sure. Sorry to be consumed, right?
I don't have a contact. That's the only thing.
Yeah. I mean, I can Google CNS and find their
Just call
emails.
their front desk
Call
and
their-
tell them who you are. And they'll
Yeah.
put you in touch.
I do have so I worked with CNS a bit while they were doing this, so I do have the contact information. So I just figured I'd give some background. So for the Climate Smart Communities program, the city of Binghamton was applying for bronze and got awarded in September. And with that, they did include the greenhouse gas inventory report, which they did get approved by DEC. So DEC is good with like the methodology and the results from the greenhouse gas inventory. And for like the report itself, they used, it's called the ICLEI tool, and that's like the standard tool to do a greenhouse gas inventory. And with that tool, obviously you put all the inputs out in there and then it spits out the results. So the data should be easy to get from that. So I'm just saying it should be available to like if we ask for it. It shouldn't be too hard to get. Yeah.
I know you've said 2 or 3 times. What is the name of this product that we're discussing right now? This report, greenhouse.
The greenhouse gas inventory was the report that we were looking at, where he was talking about there being only 2 data points on the graph.
Somebody plotted a trend line
with 2 points
without the stuff in between. That's what.
So for that, 2006 is a common base year for greenhouse gas inventories because during that year, New York State paid for a lot of municipalities to have inventories. So that is a common base year. And if like the next time that the city did one was in 2022, that would track if there was nothing in between that done.
Oh, that's possible.
Yeah.
But it does seem strange, yeah.
My understanding with conversations is that there was they did only analyze 2 years. Because I did ask about that.
But the greenhouse gas is one part of the report.
Yeah.
And then you have the climate action plan.
Right.
So there's lots of data, I'm sure, with the climate action plan as far as electricity usage, fuel usage, solid waste. Anyways, lots of data.
So does this agenda item require any action by this board?
So it sounds like I, as council president, will be reaching out to CNS to see if they will provide us with the data.
As embarrassing as that is.
As embarrassing as that is, but it'll be interesting if we can get it that way. That maybe have to be how we have to work with consultants while we're still figuring out how the city works with itself.
I think the requests have been made. We're just still waiting on response at this point.
I get it.
I'm not sure that the commission has any.
But I mean, otherwise, Dr. Burling has said that she will provide it. I think it's end of May, maybe May 20th. So, I mean, I think by the next meeting, we're going to have the data one way or another.
Will there be an opportunity to have some time to review that and make some comments back to?
My understanding is that she is eager to have feedback on the final draft, and like that basically that there. If I followed my conversation with her, and sorry I don't have notes on this, that there's concern about like when something's too early in a draft phase, it getting released and getting out to the public, and causing problems and people sending emails and challenging things when it's only like kind of an early phase draft, and that the final draft, which still would be able to be revised, is really what they want to get the feedback on so that it's tweaked before it's like the final published version. So my impression was that once it gets to the state where it's felt like it's a final draft as opposed to an intermediary draft, that she would welcome your input and your knowledge, and that would basically be appreciated and taken into account for the final version. So my impression was that there would be time to provide feedback after she provides her report to us. And
my impression is there will not be enough time.
What sort of deadlines are we up against? Do we know?
Well, yeah, Adasa just said they have a contract with CNS, and CNS apparently is setting the timeline instead of the city setting the timeline. So why shouldn't the city should set the timeline, not the consultant?
Something about May 31st or?
Yeah, but it's.
Oh, May 31st. So they're going to give it to us on.
If there's a concern about things going out to the general public, I would think that we could make an agreement that any reviews we make get submitted back to the city before there's any public educational information distributed.
Yeah, internal communication.
We would
is
want
not
city
public
council
record.
to approve it before we put it out anyway. So it would go through a process.
So she was saying, my intention is to have, I'm pulling up Dr. Burling's email. My intention is to have both the GHG inventory and the CAP in final draft form for council review at the May 20th work session.
But the thing is that Luke requested raw data. There's
Right.
no such thing as a draft of raw data.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
And for her to say that she decided that she doesn't want to release the data without the report, it's not part of the request either. So I don't think she has that, that's not her prerogative.
It's pretty black and white request.
Yes, and Luke even reminded her of the request, and there was no response to that, right?
Well, now it's twice.
Yeah, twice.
There was a clarification point made, and it's been 5 days or greater at this point.
There's no need
And
to
I
withhold
mean,
raw
as I
data
said,
unless you're
the
planning
request
to
for the
cook
data started long before this.
There's no reason to hold raw data unless you're planning to cook the data.
Can I just interrupt just to
That-
introduce
Yeah.
Councilwoman Middleton?
Hi, how are you guys?
Has come to the
Welcome.
meeting.
Hi, I just wanted to stop in and.
Nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you as well.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You want to move past this item? I think.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think you got a good agenda.
I think we've gone as far as we can go today on this topic. For further discussion in the future. New business, discussion of the open meetings law and email. Here again from Corp Counsel's office, we've gotten responses back, and I still am not clear. Committee meetings, my understanding with the open meetings law is that committee meetings for the commission have no authority to do anything on their own before being brought back to the commission and voted on in the commission's capacity, that the open meetings laws would not be in effect for committee meetings. Committee meetings, because any committee meetings and topics and any discussion has to be brought back to be voted by the entire commission or whoever's available for any action items. That's my interpretation of the meetings law. I might be wrong, but I didn't see a clarification. I saw an opinion from court counsel, but I didn't agree with it. I'm not an attorney.
I mean, I was going to say, if you and I we can walk up to Corporation Council after this and see if we can hop in to have a sit down with somebody. The email asynchronous is sometimes a bit.
I wasn't sure about the email because I just started a separate email just for commission business that way, because they're talking about foilable emails and going on and on and on. So unless you had a city email address, maybe you would want to do that. So I would leave that up to the membership for now. So there's clarification on that also, as far as foilables.
Two comments. One comment is we're not the first and last commission that's existed in the city. Is there a written policy for all commissions in the city? And if there isn't, why isn't there? The same thing pertains to email. It's part of data governance. There should be a black and white policy for municipal government. I believe there was one in the past, but I don't want to be quoted on that. Sure. To me, it's I put 2 or 3 years into the commission that was a committee that was created of municipal staff to work with a consultant to develop a data governance program. The report's been published. It's available online. You can all see it. They had recommendations in it around data sharing, around email accounts, around telephones, badges, anything that's data driven. And somehow it seems like in the city, that whole thing's flown out the window. So when we make a request, it's like we're asking for something that we're not entitled to.
Yeah, we're not.
It's for security. It's compliance with Homeland Security.
We're not trying to generate more work for anybody. Some things, it does take some effort to adjust or to change your operations.
So I want to respond. So I have not gotten anything back yet. I think we had a little side conversation before, and I see that we have it in a separate discussion down below. But I did reach out to HR to understand, and I see we have the badge discussion in a separate spot, why it is that COG members have badges and CDAC members do not have badges, because those are both paid. I understand that we have boards that are, this is not a paid one, but I was trying to understand, is there a criteria to get badges? So I reached out to HR to ask about that, and I've asked more, expand my ask in my follow-up email to say more broadly, what is the policy for people that are appointed on boards and commissions?
Everyone's taking an oath.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but I am looking into the badge access for everyone, because I know, yeah, obviously the criteria shouldn't be people appointed by the mayor get a badge and people appointed by city council don't.
We're jumping ahead on
no,
agenda.
I know, but it's just directly responding to this.
It is related.
That's the policy.
It basically comes down to, why doesn't the city have a uniform policy that pertains to everybody?
Right.
This whole structure is all on paper. So there should be a data policy that goes along with it. It's just like common sense.
Yeah.
I want to say something about open meetings law. Open meetings law, we're talking about state law, correct? So there's an office within the Department of State in New York State that will give you an opinion if you give them a scenario. And my understanding of the open meetings law, because I dealt with the previous one, Bob Freeman, he's no longer there, but whoever's there now will do that. You give them a scenario, they'll say whether the open meetings law applies and how it applies. And at that time, I found out that committee meetings are subject to open meetings law. And if the city has any other policy, it also is stated in the open meetings law that you can have a municipal law that is more open, but it cannot be less open. You cannot have a municipal law that is more restrictive to
when you
access.
Say committees, are you talking about the council committees, or do you mean?
In my case, it was a community board.
Oh, it was a community board. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
in New York City.
So the definition of that committee versus what we're talking about, we're more, I would call them subcommittees in that context, because we're a commission, we're not a committee. So I think we're comparing something that's called a committee to something that's called a commission.
To them?
I think that would be a good place to start, rather than go to the council's office.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Okay, so
and they have written opinions. You can look at their archives. You know. So
who's going to take that action item? So Richard, do you want to take that action item to reach out
to the state? Yeah.
I actually have looked at that page and read some of it. That's where I came up with my opinion that it was not part of the open meetings law, based on an opinion that they had written, which I didn't.
What was not part of?
If we have a committee, any commission meetings are open meetings law, my understanding, but committee meetings are not, because they can't do something.
They're not voting.
So if this commission were to impanel a committee to study something and report back to this commission, their activity in between,
the committee's activity wouldn't, my opinion is the committee's activity wouldn't be under part of the open meetings law.
Okay.
I mean, and it's not to try and hide anything, it's just to not have to be so cumbersome of setting up a meeting in a place and being able to record it, video it. I mean, you're talking a lot of time and effort, in my opinion, that could be used on other things.
Okay.
So we'll get an opinion on that, and we'll report back.
Okay, so not to be broken record, but just to be clear on the record. Whatever pertains to us, is there another us, this commission, is there another us within the large scope of city government? And if there is, then it should be the same for that other group as it is for us.
Sure.
Or if we're supposedly different than, say, the electrical board or the CDAC or the planning commission, tell us how we're different, like in terms of structural, formal relationship that empowers us with certain rights and privileges, because we are all sworn officials. That's one thing we have in common. It's a starting point. You know, if we're asking for a badge to just get us through security on the basis that we've already been vetted as sworn officials, why is that complicated?
Sure. Okay. Any more comments on this topic? Being none, we'll move forward to the discussion. NISAC resolution to support stewardship and urging the establishment of a stewardship program for packaging and printed paper. Councilwoman Matavetsky, did you want to make some comments?
Yeah, so I want to try and pull everything up. NICOM was how I got directed to a Citizens Campaign for the Environment webinar. So they were pulling together all the NICOM, so the New York Conference of Mayors, cities, and NICOM tends to be on the more conservative side in terms of as an organization, but they partnered with Citizens Campaign for the Environment because municipal waste is a huge deal, and it falls on local taxpayers, but it's not something that local governments are able to deal with in terms of laws regulating the packaging. So that's why they were getting municipal government elected officials together on this webinar to try and educate us on the topic and encourage city councils to pass resolutions in support of a bill at the state level to push for laws relating to packaging. I guess that's the topic. And so I sent over what I received from doing the webinar over to the chair. And
I think there's several proposals, right? The governor, I think, is in favor, and I think the state senate and the assembly are looking at legislation to reduce packaging, going back to the manufacturers and suppliers and shipping companies, maybe somebody like Amazon. But I think that's a huge thing with solid waste and with plastics. The amount of materials used in shipping and in food processing, and from restaurants to grocery stores to wherever. I mean, it's just a huge amount of our solid waste, and it's expensive.
They went through in the webinar, they went through like the history. There's a lot of these types of bills that have happened over time. They started the history with the 1982 New York State bottle bill. Then they talked a little bit, you know, they had the lead acid battery take back in 1991, and oil waste, rechargeable batteries in 2010, electric waste in 2010, pharmaceuticals in 2018. It's something with paint in 2021. So they were kind of talking about the history of these state level bills making kind of producers, or I guess like in terms of pharmaceuticals, like the fact that like I can take my waste pharmaceuticals to a CVS or a Walgreens and they have to take them back to deal with the disposal of it rather than going into the regular waste stream. So basically people that are more involved with the profiting of the sale of the items, whether it be the manufacturers or the point of sale people, figuring out how to draw this stuff out of the waste stream.
They've done some of it with electronics. There's places I know that if they sell them, they have to take them back.
A big worry that they tried to state, data to offset is that if you put the cost onto the people that make and sell stuff, that they will just pass that cost to the consumer, and that this will be cause for more rise in prices and negatively impact lower income folks who are buying products, right? They looked at, so Europe and Canada are much more far along in these types of bills. As these bills were passed in Europe, they did not see prices of goods go up, and they had quite a bit of data from countries.
Well, they have to have all the data on both sides and analyze that, because you have the cost of getting rid of the waste that's been generated, the cost of shipping it, the cost of hauling it, the cost of manufacturing it to begin with. So all these other costs.
They had quotes from some manufacturers, I think in Germany, if I remember right, that were talking about their positive support for these types of bills as well. So I'm trying to think, they had, extended producers of stuff. There's some other states that have do more than New York State's doing right now, but they specifically mentioned kind of Canada as a model as well.
So are you looking for a formal vote from the commission to support the the council? I was hoping that this I don't know if there was time for people to actually review anything for this, because obviously the state session ends now in a few weeks. But if there are people that are at least interested in reviewing the information, I don't know if you passed it to everyone. I'm sorry, my email's a bit of a mess. I think I did. I don't know. It's getting to be. But if it's something that people are interested in looking at, because I would like kind of feedback on whether this bill that they would like us to support does what it purports to do. I mean, I just sat through an hour-long infomercial on what they're requesting. Would like to speak up here. But I would be interested in your opinions about it. Sure. Ashley?
Sorry, I'm just saying that I have to jump off. I have a work call, but thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
I don't think this commission should vote unless we have a state bill number.
Yeah, there is one.
There's probably more than one.
Well, could we have a vote supporting legislation that reduces packaging in New York State?
Well, I mean, I'd like something a little bit more and it may not be able to function in terms of as a vote, but I would be interested in individuals, since, I mean, there's not going to be another meeting for a month, and by then state is going to be out of session. But if individuals have thoughts on how you think the city should move on this,
City council.
City council, yeah. So like whether it be passing a resolution or sending a letter, or if you have thoughts and interest in this topic and you want to read it over and advise, I am interested in that, and I can share that report with city council, like individual conversations, because at this point we don't have time to have a vote on it here. Like, we either do something at the next.
Right.
I either introduce a resolution.
I'll start with this. As the former commissioner of public works, I support the reduction of packaging, especially plastic usage, or an adoption of more environmentally friendly materials used in packaging. And I support the reduction in solid waste. And any resolutions or legislation that leads to that, I'm in favor of.
So So again, since I understand that not everyone here has reviewed everything that was said, that if you want to review it, you can send me an email. Another option is anybody can submit a request for legislation to the clerk's office. So if you have a specific idea on how there's something, how you would like us to move something forward, and would like to take that on as some legwork, that is another path. So emailing me your thoughts after reviewing the specifics of what the Conservation of the Environment / NICOM is requesting City Council do. Basically, that's I'm looking for advice on this, whether it's something
I can't remember if it was
worth doing.
It was a solid resolution for legislation, but I believe they were looking to reduce the packaging by 50%, and there was a date like 2035. I don't remember exactly because I went quickly, but
I'd be willing to take
understanding.
a hard look at it. Give you an
Right.
email,
Yeah.
And you could share the emails with council.
Yeah, absolutely. And they can be submitted as public comment too. I mean, there's all these kind of normal ways. You're all city residents. So you can request legislation, you can submit to public comment, we can read them out loud. Council will hear them read out loud if they're read through the, through the public comment.
My question is, what is the timeline for doing this?
Well, again, there's only a few weeks left of the state meeting. So our next business meeting is in 2 weeks. So I either move something and get it on the work session for 2 weeks from this past Monday, and expedite it and see if council is willing to expedite to vote on that Wednesday, or it's session's over and there's no point doing anything. It's over.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything further on that? Okay, nothing further discussion.
Could I just ask, is it left that Hadassah will send this information out to us?
I was I think Luke's, no, this is the waste. So, okay,
Did
I'll have to
I
find
know
it.
you sent out some stuff, but I'm just not quite sure what I don't remember an actual bill number.
I'm with you, Julian. I didn't look through it far enough to get a bill number. Because I just looked at it.
I will forward to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
I'll add that this has been a discussion, besides the CCE group you're talking about, but other environmental groups are all supporting it. They're saying that it should be up for voting assembly next week.
No.
Did the county EMC support it?
I don't know that.
I missed the meeting.
I mean, I can still move with a letter from me as council member, and I can ask other council members if they want to sign on it. It's not as clean as a resolution, but I mean, there are things that I can try to do to make sure that we're in that discussion.
So there's only an assembly bill, not a senate bill also?
I'm gonna forward you.
There should be. Leah Webb supports it. I don't have bill numbers, but
Okay, can we close this topic or is there more conversation? Okay, moving on. Discussion city badges. I think we covered that, did we not?
I think we covered it.
Okay, discussion of access to city data info records. That's a discussion that could go on for eternity, I think.
Right.
I'm gonna have
But
to
I think
excuse
we-
myself.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thanks, Eric. I will send you a draft of the minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll prepare for my role.
Okay, and we do have to remember, we have to try and get them to the city clerk's office 2 weeks after the meeting took place.
Okay.
A draft, and they're only drafts, so if there's errors, omissions, whatever, we have time to straighten them out at our next meeting. And
Expect them to be foiled immediately.
we might as well just put the person on our email list
Yeah,
and just send them right to them, whoever's that curious.
Yeah.
And they are invited to the meeting if they'd like to just come
yes.
and
Thank you.
witness it firsthand.
Luke, we back up to city badges? We're
Sure.
not getting them, right?
We don't
Well,
know.
we don't
that.
know.
It's
We're
an
working on it.
unknown.
Okay.
I know the,
There are commissions and boards that have them.
the plumbing board does get badges. They do not have city email address. That I do know. So I'm not sure, as Tom brought up, and I think was correct in his wording, what's the city policy for boards, commissions, and committees as far as city badges?
Yeah, okay.
Just to be clear about the plumbing board, since I was involved in procuring the badges for them, it was just, because those badges are a digital device, so they can be used to unlock doors and things on an item basis. All theirs were, they're just their photo on an official card, so when they go through security, they can just show them this is what, then you don't have to walk through the.
No, theirs are different than ours.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I
Because ours actually
recall,
open doors.
Right.
Ours don't open doors.
as I recall, back 15 years ago, the process was when you took, for most groups, when you took the oath, they
Right.
took your picture,
Right,
and
exactly.
that started the wheels rolling to your
Like
badge.
your badge. And then they can program it for whatever box or.
What you have access to and what you don't have access to, and also it also helps them monitor who's been in the building, who is in the
Exactly.
building, and
That's
who
right.
isn't in the building.
That's right.
So it's beneficial security-wise all the way around, because if something happens, if there's a fire in the government plaza, we haven't signed in or anything. We went through security, but the firemen aren't gonna know who they're looking for.
They could look at the video.
No. Okay, good luck. Good luck on the videos. Okay. So, anything left on badges?
No.
I think that's going to be worked on. Joss is going to look into that. Am I correct?
Yes,
Okay.
like I said, I have an email back and forth going with HR.
Okay, discussion, access to city data, info, and records. I think we've beat that horse pretty well. Additional agenda items. Is there other topics that we want for discussion today?
I think
Oh,
maybe this section would be a good section for us
base camp?
Yes, I guess that goes into the data info records access.
Oh, let me back up then, because I do think that's important.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Matavetsky had sent an email. I don't know if we all got that or if it was just me.
Probably just you. I mostly just
about
emailed you.
setting up the commission on base camp. Now, is that a place where we could have like access to reports, and instead of emailing
Right.
everybody back and forth?
So that's how COD functions right now.
We could send out a heads up that I just added something to base camp, but then all of us would have access to base camp online. I think that would be a much preferable method.
Then digging through
I do
emails to
remember
try and
using it in
find
the
things.
city. I can't remember how to use it, but maybe we might need a little, some kind of training or something to use the base camp.
So it's an internal site for city information, basically, or what?
Yeah, so Basecamp's a project management tool. A lot of organizations use it. Like
I think it's a good
Toastmasters,
tool.
Toastmasters International uses it. Literally it's community groups use it, government uses it, for-profit businesses use it. And with the city one, I believe it's designed so that it's foilable. Like you can put the documents in there, and then if people want to know when they contact the clerk's office to get records access to see what we're doing, similar to like my government email, they can see what's in there if they need to for those types of things, which is also helpful for those of you using like your private emails, that if we're keeping all the documents and like that kind of stuff in the base camp, then it should be a little bit more easy to navigate for.
Instead of sending things around, you could just say upload it,
Mhm.
document on the base camp. Right?
But you'd also want some sort of training.
So,
I think so. I'm not sure.
So base camp drives us right back around in a circle again, which is like the city's had base camp since the early 2000s.
Yep.
It's never had or at least in my experience, I've never had a comprehensive or universal adoption by our department.
That's very true.
And it is a project management tool. It's web-based. So part of the idea behind it was that you could access it through different types of devices from different types of locations. You could do it from home, you could do it from work, you could do it from the field. It does support file sharing, it does support chatting, it supports text messaging, all these different, I think it supports video conferencing now. I don't think the original Basecamp did, but.
Can I ask you a question about Basecamp? Because I remember using it, but vaguely. So say I wanted to look at the data for like a climate action plan or a greenhouse gas inventory. Somebody could just upload it onto Basecamp.
Right. So for example, for city council, we have we get quarterly data reports from the comptroller. So those are huge files. They can't even be sent through email.
Sure.
So they get put straight to our Basecamp. So that's how city council members have access to those.
It's understandable. Files. A lot of stuff is too big to send through email. So to me, it makes perfect sense. That's just me.
So the point I was going to get to is that in order for us to have Basecamp, there's two ways you could do it. You can do it as a private individual. You could set just like you did.
The city has it. I mean, I've reached out to IT.
Yeah, I get that. But then that means the city opens the door to us into their data system, right?
Not kind of, but not really. Because you don't see the stuff in there. You don't, like, our council one doesn't have options for us to see any of the stuff.
No, that's not what I mean. But you're going to have to get a user account and a password in order to get into it. And
well, that must mean that all the
so the
members have
global software can be restricted. Like the planning commission can only see planning commission stuff. City council can only see city council stuff. But you're an official member now. You have a user account and an ID. That's what it boils down to. If you don't have a user account and ID, then you're a guest, and you can set it up for guests. It's supposed to be interactive for the public, so the public can come in as a guest. But all that in the background is being controlled from security bases. So certain types of documents can't get to the surface where people could access them. Certain types of communications are restricted. All those types of things. It gives you control and it gives you power. So
personally, I would be in favor of it.
No, absolutely, but it implies that someone in a decision-making capacity with municipal staff has to say, yes, we're going to let you be part of the team. And that hasn't happened.
Well, and I think
I'm going to reach out and ask every department. I don't want to prejudge every interaction.
If you ask enough times,
positive.
If you ask enough times in enough different ways, somebody's going to have an off day and say yes by accident.
So it's an example. It's an example. The data manager for the software would say, Lupe has permission to upload documents, but you don't and I don't because we're not the chair. So it had to go through you, or they could say everybody can upload a document. There's all kinds of controls.
We will fry that fish when it's in the pan.
So I'm going to ask about Basecamp Basket. Certainly would help me because these emails are out of control.
Well, and I think when there's large files and stuff available and a single place to go back and store the records for foils, for open meetings and anything that people want to access, it's all in one place, one-stop shop. I think that's great. And then if there's any issues, like I said, I would like to have a little training myself on it, to a refresher if nothing else. If anybody else, I think we should try it. Once we have permission and have it set up.
Is that something that would be handled by Bob?
I would be reaching out to Wade. But I reached out to the IT director.
Works out in the same department.
Yeah, same department.
The director.
Bob might be the one involved in implementing it, but I'm not sure.
Good. Sounds great.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm thinking the additional agenda items. would be a good place for listing some topics that we want to see on the next agenda. Not really a place to.
Yes.
So,
future agenda. I
right.
should have put future agenda items.
I mentioned to you, I don't know who sees it on what emails at this point, but blue bags, we started kind of getting off topic at the beginning along those lines, and I think that's because of our conversations on them. Blue bags is going to be coming up on our agenda for city council work session to start a conversation about them. And I wanted to make sure that this commission has the heads up that that discussion is going to be happening, and that we're going to be engaging with that at city council, and that I want to make sure that an environmental perspective is being included and considered as a piece of a big puzzle.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff environmental.
And again, not to discuss for right now, but just putting it on our agenda for next meeting.
Okay. Just also tie it with economics.
Yeah.
I mean, any of this stuff, I think there's an advantage to keeping an economic part of the picture, not the sole driver. To balance things out is important, because I think there's so many opportunities at this point in history going forward that most things should be a win-win. If it's environmental, it usually is economic, and it may be stretched over a larger period of time than the immediate sense, but I think there's mutual benefits in most environmental issues.
Also, like,
which helps you build political capital and get things improved.
this should probably be discussed at a future date, but just as a kind of cautionary comment, what Luke and I have observed in our experience in solid waste or sanitation, broadly speaking, two things. One is that it always has to be contextualized in relation to the county, because the county landfill, similarly to the sewage treatment plant, is like a driver of the whole industry, if you will, or the whole process. That'll be the industry, like the sanitation industry, as much as the process of dealing with solid waste in the city is always contingent on what's happening with the landfill as an institution and their processes. So they have to be like meshed together. So people look at that real easily around, why do other communities not have blue bags and we have blue bags? But that's not exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the larger process. And the same thing within our own city. Like the discussion that I read in George Holmes's essay briefly today, like, was very good and very like helpful. It was focused on equity and participation in things, but it's completely in a vacuum in relation to how is garbage actually collected in the city. And I'm not saying that that made it wrong or anything. I'm just saying that oftentimes the two get separated. So actions are taken by council to try to advance a policy goal or maybe a political and policy goal without an awareness of like, how does that really reflect what's happening on the ground in public works? Does it involve more employees? Are employees adequately skilled? Are, you know, everyone thinks about garbage people on the curb, but they don't think about the people in the treasurer's office that were selling city garbage bags. They're just as part of the process. And we're not good at articulating that as a municipality. Like code enforcement is an example.
Education's key.
There's almost, I've told you this before, but there's almost no department in the city of Binghamton that doesn't have direct involvement on a daily basis with code enforcement. And it's like, you never think of that if you didn't have it pointed out to them, which I think. So anyway, that's just a caution because they don't get lost in this stuff.
That's, I want to say I appreciate the council taking this up, the blue bag issue, and also part of the discussion should be composting, citywide composting. You know, Vines is actually looking at playing a part in that. Maybe there could be.
I had a little some side discussions about kind of the idea of kind of like neighborhood level composting, right? Like citing compost in specific locations, as
I
opposed to
think
having,
so.
as opposed to having a pickup service, which may be prohibitive. So I went out to Cornell Cooperative Extensions to talk about composting recently, and they showed me their compost drop-off site that they have behind Cornell Cooperative Extensions, and it sounded like there's some conversations growing around having these kind of specific sites that people can go and bring their compost.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things, I think it's important to involve the city departments that actually deal with it on a daily basis, get their input and their feel for it. And it's like, you know, if council does decide to move in a direction, whatever it is, I would recommend maybe you look at like a pilot plan and say, okay, we're going to designate this area, but do that with the departments affected by it, because instead of generating more work for them, it may just be some different work, or do things a little bit different rather than just say, here's an additional layer of work for you to do in the same amount of time you already have for the same pay. Because most people are not looking for that.
Hypothetically, our ex officio reps from DPW / parks and Parks Department and DPW will hypothetically be attending these meetings, so we can be having those conversations as part of the conversation from the jump. I mean, that's why the past council back in the 70s, when they created this commission, put them in there.
Sure.
And you know, I guess we said at the beginning, we're waiting to hear from someone from the planning commission to be assigned.
Data-driven decisions. At least it helps. It doesn't have to be the only driver, but it helps.
So I have blue bags and compost. What other additional agenda items for next time?
That's a question. Is there a timeline on this? Like the city's getting ready to order some blue bags or something?
No, we're just kicking off the discussion because it's been boiling under the surface for a long time.
It's a chief complaint in Binghamton.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, and I was trying to find, I couldn't find any old records, but we had a sanitation commission that was started by city council back in, I think it was like 2007 or 8 or somewhere around there. And that's how we came up with the stickers and different things. I know Sean Massey was spearheading that for council. It might be worth reaching out if he had some old data or something from that, because I know, you know, that was one of the topics was the blue bags and different things and the economics of it. And I thought we had at least some successes from that commission. It went on for a couple of years.
So blue bags, compost, maybe a discussion on sanitation commission.
Yeah, maybe council wants to
So you're with Sierra Club. There's a bunch of you with Sierra Club. I don't know if we want in this meeting to have a few minutes report out from the groups that people cross over with, like what is Sierra Club working on that might be relevant to the city. And then the other group, you're going to the county environmental working?
I missed this last one, but I'm trying to
right. So if there's somebody
there's a lot of meetings.
But I would
groups.
Recommend that on our next agenda that we have like a section just for like report outs from like related meetings attended via webinars or whatnot, something where we're communicating the network.
I did email out the, and I forgot to put you on. I apologize, but I know you were at the meeting, so
the climate summit.
The climate summit, yes.
The Binghamton 2 degrees.
And Binghamton 2 degrees.
We're looking at something with the CAC also on the Action Commission.
Oh, yeah, statewide organization of climate action committees, which I think we would fall under that umbrella, even though the name is not. Julian, I think you mentioned years back being on a CAC for the
Yeah,
city?
here, I have no idea under what auspices it was, I guess, because it wasn't called the Commission on the Conservation of the Environment, but it was way back in the 1990s. But it was officially the Conservation Advisory Council. It was, trying to remember. I'm afraid I can't even remember how we were appointed, but
Wonder if the city has any records of that?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
Are there any other groups? So Sierra Club, the county environmental. Is
No.
there any other?
I'm on the university committee, committee for the university environment. So
The county's group is that I've been going with is EMC. It's Environmental Management Council Committee, right? Advisory committee, yeah, advisory committee to the county.
I would suggest that we have a brief 1 or 2 sentence kind of report out on if there was something that month from any of those groups that might be of interest or relevant, and announcements of their upcoming meetings, like Sierra Club's upcoming meetings, so that we and people watching us on YouTube are aware of community events and things where they can get educated on the topics.
One of the issues I'm running into personally is I agree with you, and I think it would be good to email our minutes out to these groups or something out to them. I am not good with the computer stuff as far as keeping email lists, and I do have to get the computer when I was like 14 years old or whatever. I almost have to kickstart it and crank it up. But anyways, that's one thing, not having like a part-time staff person or something. I mean, we do have our limitations.
Right.
And we want to kind of keep things with some kind of balance where we can keep going forward without burning people out or get too consuming.
So were there any other agenda items that we want to set for next meeting?
I think that, we make decisions that have impacts and they're not always easy to reverse. So if we're going to look at something, for example, like the Blue Bag Commission, we should go back to what we were doing at the last meeting and form a task force for that meeting to do between meetings. We didn't go between meetings because this meeting was moved up in the schedule, but usually I think we would have committee meetings, task force meetings in between meetings. We should do that with these topics that were brought up to them. Do them justice.
Personally, I would like to find out where we are in the open meetings law before we do committee meetings, so we know what the requirements are.
Right.
Because I don't want to get too far and have to backtrack. Having people foil and all of a sudden getting into a political.
You can always have them open it because they
well, but it's cumbersome.
Yeah. We can make it work. We'll make it work.
But to set that up, to schedule it, to formally have it, to invite people, to be able to film it, all those things.
If the committee meetings are put onto a regular schedule, being on the off cycle from this meeting, and they could be booked out for the rest of the year, already scheduled all at once, and then you know what I mean, like our city council meetings and our, we have them at a regular time every month, and so they are booked out on the calendar for the whole year, and then you don't have to worry about trying to schedule it. The only thing is to get the agenda up more than 24 hours in advance.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I still want to go back to knowing what the rules, what the regulations are. I don't want to get into a battle over.
Okay. But we're getting off topic for agenda items. So are we done with agenda items? Because the next section is future meetings, location, dates, and times.
One question. I think I understood at the beginning of this meeting that this one was not live streamed unlike the last one.
Because of the Zoom. So that Ashley could zoom in, because they would have to do a whole different thing to set it up, as my understanding.
But it will be posted on YouTube. People can watch it.
For other agenda items, I've got one.
Yeah.
I think. I think so we're talking about blue bags, talked about compost, that was on my list. Then I wanted to talk about bikes, e-bikes, scooters. The city and the state have like invested considerable amounts of money in like the greenway infrastructure. I don't know if there has been a corresponding program or initiative to help with the adoption of bikes and scooters, and I imagine that has been done somewhere else.
Adoption?
Like promotion of like getting people to start using bikes or like scooters as a viable.
I had a constituent related to this
transportation.
who is interested in starting up a rickshaw business. I invited him here to speak during the public comment. Obviously, he didn't make it today. But he was interested in like a e-bike level kind of rickshaw business. I don't know how that would work or whatnot, but I encouraged him to attend this group because it was a lot of brain power.
BMTS is a very valuable group, Binghamton Metropolitan Transportation Study Group, and they have graphic engineers, planners, they have the technical expertise. They've done a lot of the data collection, analysis as far as biking, safe streets, all different kinds of stuff. So I think they would be the person to invite to city council to hear as far as, because they've probably already done a lot of research on most of the topics, not all of them. But one thing I want to just clarify with this, bringing it up about the state spending the money on like the greenways and everything, it's mostly for FHWA highway, federal highway money. Usually, typically 80 or 85%, and then the state usually kicks in 10%, sometimes 15%, and then the city usually 5%, sometimes 10%. Like along the astronomical amount of money they spent on the 2 miles of path going from south side to BU, nice path, about 25 million roughly. To me, if you went down the center line, you could have gone to Appalachian, maybe a week up, like they did on Erie Boulevard in Syracuse, for a lot less money. And I'm not an engineer, like, it's maybe that's not feasible and not really doable. It's just food for thought, and I should have gone to the public meetings and spoke up many years ago because it was discussed when I was working for the city about that. I know Mark Bowers, who worked for DOT, was a real proponent, and Scott Riegel from BMTS is a huge proponent for bicycling, and I know also who works up in economic development, I think still to this day. I'm trying to think of his first name, Joel Boyd, avid bicycler in economic development. But those are just places where there is a lot of expertise, and I know they've done a lot of research and studies. And I'm with you on that. I'm a real proponent of the biking and walking.
Later, you're also interested in bike share.
Yeah, either bike share. Whenever I travel and go to like larger cities and they have those scooters all over the place, or they have the bike share things, it's like I wonder how viable those would be in Binghamton. Like, do we have the money to start one up? Like, what is the startup cost, and like how do you sustain that?
Curious myself.
Yeah,
so they had 20,000 bikes in Seattle.
I don't know if we need that many.
well, now there's very few. They did it for a few years, and they had competing companies, and they do the same thing with cars. They have car share. Yeah, where they just park and you can unlock them online.
Yeah. So I think all of those things, like
sure.
Parking is another big complaint, and like rather than building more parking garages, we can get people to use bikes, ride share, scooters, walking, so that frees up space that for the people that have to drive 30 minutes into town that are where those things aren't really viable. So those are things I'd like to try to see if there's effective means to promote.
There's
And-
lots of parking studies through BMTS that they have copies
Yeah.
of, the city has copies of, and I think the parking problem is a real misnomer because there's plenty of parking.
Being on traffic board, I hear a lot about people illegally parking in time-bound parking spaces, which seems to be a big driver of the parking challenges. From what I'm hearing, I have not done a deep dive into the data, but if there's just people using the 2-hour parking or 1-hour parking correctly, then there would be parking for customers of the stores.
A lot of cities have gone way further. They've gone away from parking in front of stores, and it's more about promoting walking or cycling 4 or 5 or 6 blocks. Most people, when they travel, the same people that travel away from here to go to someplace else, they have no problem walking 6 blocks or 8 blocks. You might want to look at planning, putting commercial on the first level and doing away with islands of where there's nothing for people to walk by, to stop in, or a reason to walk by there, because it's like they feel unsafe. I think that's a bigger issue than in reality than the parking.
Expansion of public transportation.
Sure.
I think that was in my email. That's just another piece of it.
That's another BMTS does the
Yeah,
bus studies and sizing and routes, and that's been an ongoing thing. I know I was on the BMTS for 8 years. You wouldn't know it, but I was the chair for like 6 years from my lack of skills up here, but I'm pretty rusty. Anyways, a lot of those things have been promoted over the years to varying effect. If you, just a side note, if you go online to City Nerd on YouTube, he calls himself a plangineer, and his background is transportation engineering and planning. He travels to cities all over the country, all over the world, and he is a true nerd, but he has the data and the analysis to back up like his statements. He personally doesn't own a car. He goes everywhere by public transportation or bicycles, and he rates the cities and the pros and the cons. It's very informative. And he also shows you places where there's federal studies and data to prove the points, where there's access to a lot of information backing up these trends in different forward-thinking cities and places as they develop. Like the roundabout, I mean, just a simple thing. I mean, one of the biggest greenhouse gases is idling vehicles. And the roundabout doesn't completely eliminate idling, but it prevents most of it, which is a lot less greenhouse gas. And so far, the world hasn't come to an end, even though you would have thought for 2 or 3 years that it was going to.
They're still talking about it. Don't get it twisted.
They can talk about it all they want. It works. Yep. It works all over. It's not really the twilight zone.
Stay out of this hot button issue.
Anyways, I didn't realize it was even a topic these days, but I know they're a little light on the maintenance.
All right, so it sounds like we're maybe through listing off what we're looking at as the agenda for next time. So our next agenda item is future meetings, location, date, and time.
Well, is this a good time for people? Apparently it's not a good time for Matt and Darius. I think works at the zoo besides going to school.
Yes, that's how I met him. That's how I recruited him to this.
Do you know what his like when he works at the zoo? Like is he?
I don't know his hours.
They had final exams.
Final exams.
Right. So, because I think he said normally he could come at this time, normally. And I apologize for the short, bringing it up a week, but I'm going to be away even Monday.
But I think a monthly meeting is a good idea because it's time to have committee meetings in between.
But the question is, if we're holding off on starting the committee meetings, do we want more frequent meetings
I
to,
think
handle
it worked better for Ashley on the 1 o'clock on the third Thursday. We're on the
Yes.
second Thursday, right? So should we try and go back to the third Thursday at 1 o'clock? I think this meeting room works.
Yes, I think
Yep.
she said the second Thursday is when she had a standing meeting.
Yeah,
The third Thursday was when she did not.
so what do you think, the third Thursday?
I'm fine with it, third
Yep.
Thursday.
Okay, so that would be third Thursday, that would be June 20th. Day after Juneteenth.
or 1 PM again.
1 PM. Council work session chambers. So the agenda, let me just jot down a list of agenda items to not forget. I think we want to keep we got the secretary out of the way. Eric thanks the secretary. I'd like to keep the discussion about the climate action plan and greenhouse gas inventory front.
We
and center.
should have both the report and the data by June 20th.
Why that? It's kind of hard to
Well,
report on it. Or
May 20th is when Dr. Burling said she was reporting it, giving it all to council. It was May 20th. So we'd have it May 20th.
May
And I will reach
20th.
out to CNS
Now,
now and see if we can.
when we say all of it, do we mean raw data?
That was what I understood from her email, but I'll look at it again.
I don't know how to spell that any clearer.
So her statement was, I am sure you understand that providing the raw data without the final draft of the report could remove important context from the data.
And I responded back after that, but not
Right.
got a response.
But yes, so May
Other
20th,
than I had 3
May
emails
20th
from
report plus data is what she said.
plus data.
So we'll have it May 20th. I will reach out to CNS before then.
Okay, that sounds good. So we'll leave that on. Topic of discussion.
I don't know, to me, it's the data that provides context for the report. The report doesn't provide context for the data. Right, Julie?
I think
I agree.
it goes both ways. Depends how well the data
we're
is laid.
science-
I don't mind hearing their analysis, but I would like to do my own personally.
Yeah, and we can still get hers later, but there's no
Yeah, sure.
reason to hold it up.
All right, so we have a time, location, and date. So you're taking a motion for adjourn.
Motion adjourned, Ted
Second.
Costello.
Third, fourth.
You don't-
Second, Richard.
All
All in favor?
aye. Meeting adjourned. Ring your gavel.
Bang, done. Thank you, everyone.
I think they just said, hopefully that isn't.
Got a little bit short.